Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, Mysterious Voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels. Today, it is not a specific day or anything like that. Rather, I just want to do the usual wrap-up and TBR for January and February, respectively. I think there were a lot of great reads in January, starting with Wuthering Heights. That was a good choice on my part, and hopefully the rest of the year kind of meets that kind of standard that I've established, because I do think this is Wuthering Heights is kind of a measuring stick for the year because it was really good. And as I'll talk about later, Emily Bronte was a phenomenal writer, and maybe I can, read more of her work in the future. But as for February, we are entering Black History Month, so I will be trying to read Black short stories, Black poetry, and books by Black authors. So be on the lookout for that. But without further ado, let's talk about the wrap-up and TBR, and then I'll move on from there. So what did I read in January? Well, in terms of books, I read, of course, Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I think it was very exceptional and the best of the month in terms of what I read. I really liked the sort of introspection of race in there that Bronte touches upon very lightly, as well as class and social status and things like that. And then the horror, the trouble that we're willing to put each other through out of jealousy, out of frustration with the world around us. Heathcliff is a really good villain. There are a lot of people who try to paint this as like a love story, in the same way that a lot of people try to paint Lolita as a love story, a tragic love story. But I don't think that's true. Heathcliff is very abusive towards Catherine and his own children, and that's not good. That's not a romance right there. If you believe that to be a romance, you have pretty messed up perspectives on what love and romance are. This is a very small man who was abused by others, inflicting that abuse upon other people. Much like Lolita is about a very small man who, ruins a woman's entire life just because he has an attraction to kids. And both of these stories are kind of damning of the systems and the individuals that allow that to kind of flourish. So I do have some fears that the Wuthering Heights movie that's coming out in 2026 and on Valentine's Day is going to be bad, is going to focus more on that romance like other of the adaptations have. And perhaps we're never going to get the true adaptation because people are more focused on that romance than they are on the necessarily like abusive behavior that comes out of it. I also read volume 12 of Death Note. I thought it had a good ending, pretty interesting kind of story, and we get to see the downfall of Light Yagami, a man who thought he had everything under his control, and it turns out he did not. But even in his death, people still see Kira as an infallible god who provides some sense of hope for them that there might be justice in this world or something like that. So, pretty good series, and I highly recommend that you seek it out. I also read Will Eisner's The Contract with God trilogy. I thought it was very meandering, but it had a lot of interesting insight at times. Particularly, there's a section where a neighborhood changes over the course of like several years in New York, and you see like people living in the community saying, "Oh, the people who are moving in are, undesirables, and we should get out as soon as possible." And the neighborhood keeps getting worse and worse because nobody really stays there to maintain it. And I don't think Will Eisner is pointing the blame at the minorities who are moving in, rather that nobody is really taking care of the community anymore. They're more focused on their own fears of minorities and outsiders and foreigners than they are on taking care of the place where they're living. So, of course, it would become worse over time. I also read volume 1 of The Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck. I thought it was really great. Very interesting to see Scrooge's kind of descent into greed and then his redemption at the end of the story. It is kind of funny that this entire story is about Scrooge McDuck, a cartoon character, but Don Rosa still manages to make a compelling narrative, a compelling story about that character that makes you root for him, that makes you, sad when he falls, into the trap of greed, just like those that he's kind of competing with. It's a pretty great kind of comic graphic novel kind of series. I also read The Pagoda, which I think I got from one of my coworkers. I thought it was largely boring. Kind of an interesting setup to the story about a Chinese man living in Jamaica and facing racism and things from there at the 1950s or something like that. Not a big fan of this story. Very skippable. I also read To Fill a Yellow House, which I thought had good writing at times, but I think it missed the mark on what exactly it was trying to say, because it's never really clear what it's trying to get at overall. And although its characters are interesting, I don't think that the writer did enough work to sort of get us to care or even have a through line for their arcs and what exactly they were trying to say in comparison to life in Britain, life in London, and immigration and things like that. I also read One Punch Man Volume 1, which I thought was fun, and then I also read Why the Last Man by Brian K. Vaughan, which I thought was very bad. It was misogynistic, sometimes transphobic. It's very much a man's idea of like what it would be like as the last man on Earth. Probably would have benefited from a female voice as well, but that's not the story that we ended up getting. So I just didn't like it. It should also be noted that Brian K. Vaughan also wrote Pride of Baghdad, another comic book that I read a couple years back, which I didn't end up liking. I feel like his writing is not quite there. Maybe there might be some story that turns out to be interesting, but I feel like there are better comic book writers out there right now. I also read a number of short stories, including A Song for Sleep, A Fog in Santone, Government Goat, and Overtime. All were pretty okay, but not really stand out in any specific way. A Song for Sleep had some interesting things to say about artificial intelligence and human connection and things like that, but ultimately maybe the writer didn't account for necessarily everything about it, so not quite landing for me. And then a number of poems as well. Go check out my Poetry Thursday playlist if you want more details on that. But what do I intend to read for February? Again, it is Black History Month, so you'll probably see a lot of Black literature on my list, or me talking about a lot of that throughout the month of February. In terms of books, I want to read something that I've been wanting, or that's been on my list for a while. Brene Brown. Look for that. The Known World by Edward Jones, another Black History Month read. A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. The Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck, Volume 2. That's the second part of it. You probably won't see me talk about it on here, but that's sort of like the between stories that take place in conjunction with like the what was going on in Volume 1. So that's interesting. And then also 12 Years a Slave, which I might not be able to get to, by the end of this month, but I'll probably read it in March, when I have the time. I also have a number of short stories by Black writers planned, including one by Diane Irving and another by Nathan Harris, and then a number of poems planned as well. So again, be sure to check out my Poetry Thursday playlist if you want more information about that. But anyways, those are my thoughts on the wrap-up for January and the TBR that I have planned for February. If you have any books that you'd like me to get to that you think I might be interested in, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you and have a discussion about, some various books. But otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about some of these books, or even my channel if people are interested in booktube-related things. But until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and February-related travels. Farewell.